Hey everybody, welcome to another D2D Spotlight. Today we're chatting with Brad West, one of the co-founders of Vellum. If you haven't heard of Vellum, where you been? But we're also going to look a little closer at it and find out some of it. We're going to answer all those pressing single questions, one question only, that people want to know, man. But we'll get to that. So how are you? Thanks for joining us on the program here.
Good. Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Now, I've never been able to get you on my podcast, so
all right,
we're gonna have to work on that one.
We'll do that next.
Right after this. Stick around. So Vellum, and I'm gonna give my definition of Vellum or my breakdown of Vellum, and you correct everything I said.
Yeah, you'll probably get it all right.
All right. So Vellum is I actually think of it as being just below professional grade. It gives you professional quality without the professional work or professional effort. But professional grade book layout software that will generate your ebooks and your print book, the PDF for your print book from one place with lots of free or not free, but style templates that make it look professional. I butchered that whole thing. Fix it.
But yeah, you got it right. Professional means this is your job. You take it seriously, and if you are doing this full time, you probably have 100 other things you'd rather do than spend time getting your book to look just right. And that's where we try to come in. Software that you can use on your Mac, bring in your manuscript, get it looking professional, ready to go quickly and easily. We've got, some people who've been using it for a couple of years, they say they get things out in 10 to 15 minutes. And
yeah, that's me. Yeah, especially great. Now that you have that integration with Scrivener.
Yeah. That was, a great project, group combination with Keith at Scrivener and us just kind of got together and we realized, hey, actually, this is actually really close. If we just did a few things, we could make something really nice. So we do have a lot of users who love writing in Scrivener, but when it comes time to produce their book, they want to use Vellum. So we make that as easy as possible to get from Scrivener into Vellum.
Yeah, as much as I love Scrivener, and I kind of credit Scrivener with changing the game for me and in terms of refining my writing process for novels versus copywriting. I was always trying to use it as the everything app, especially with, formatting at the end, but I was always screwing that up somehow.
Yeah, I mean,
it was never quite as clean as it needed to be.
It does a lot, and I think what people love is you can use Scrivener how you want to use it. Some people just use it to write. A lot of people keep all of their notes and character information in there, and so but I think a lot of people found that you get to that point where you're ready to publish and you see a wall of check boxes and stuff. So plenty of people do compile their book in Scrivener, but we've got lots of Scrivener users who like bringing things over to Vellum.
Yeah. But of course you guys aren't responsible for Scrivener. We'll get back on Vellum. And I really do like the whole general experience of getting the book in layout there. I used to use InDesign and some other really expensive software. Vellum comparatively is very inexpensive. It's only available on the Mac, which I know is a hang up for some folks, but just having the ability to, I love that I can, if I decide to make some changes, even last second, like I could make chapter 5 into chapter 3 if I want, and just grab and move that. That sort of versatility is very useful.
We that was a big part of how we designed Vellum. Is we didn't expect many people to write their books in Vellum, although we do hear from people who do that. But we knew we wanted to make it so that, you can get your book together, but everyone always spots some little change. And we've heard a ton from people who actually appreciate just seeing the preview on the side, because they just, even though it's been through a proofreader and
right.
their friends and their beta readers, you just see some things that you don't see before. So we really want to make sure that those last minute changes, or even after last minute, you push publish and 2 days later you spot that typo. We want to make it so that you could just get right in there, make that change,
Right,
and quickly generate new books and not have to not have to think like, oh God, I've got to go through all of this again. It's just just go in there and then hit the button again, and
right.
you've got a new set of books.
Yeah, one of the little features you guys have built in that I use all the time is the one that will help you scan and replace the curly quotes, or this straight quotes versus curly quotes.
Yeah.
Because I don't even know how that happens. Like how that they just pop in there.
Yeah, I mean, we see manuscripts. Some are just straight quotes all the way through, and you see, okay, well, you didn't have smart quotes on when you wrote that, but the majority are like, well, it's this weird mix of, that was going for a while, and for some reason, this comes up actually. We get a lot of people who do multi-author box sets, and so they'll have one manuscript that has all typographers' quotes and another that doesn't. So box sets is something you can do in Vellum, and we want to make that easy. And so, cleaning up another manuscript is something you can do.
You guys have made that easy. I was doing that all wrong for a very long time, and then I did a like an anthology with a group of authors, and there were some like specific questions, and I went in and dug around and found it's actually quite easy to make individual volumes in there.
Yeah, that's something that's can be tricky to do. To get all the authors together and make sure that each book has its own title page, has a good place to start. Doing that on your own, especially if you're trying to combine all these files in Word, can be really tricky. So that was a feature. It's been a few years since we released that, but that was one of those features that we didn't really have on our 1.0 roadmap. Because it wasn't as big at the time, and it was one of those things that, like, we heard from a lot of users who were like, hey, I love Vellum, but I want to do these box sets, either a multi-author box set or just combining a series, and that can be really challenging. And so we spent a lot of time just trying to get all the features together to make that as easy as possible. Yeah,
there are a lot of features, Brad, that have been around forever that I only just discovered.
This happens. I mean, we try to keep it as simple as possible, but it's been out a few years now. So, just this morning I answered a question. Someone's like, I wish there was some way to increase the font size in the text editor, and I was happy to say, just go to preferences. It's right there, and you can. And she was like, this is going to be tricky because I want the font size to be bigger in the text editor, but I don't want it affect my ebook or my paperback at all. I just want to see it bigger. And I was happy to say, hey, that just go here. It's already there.
Nice. Yeah, that is. But speaking of that, though, you guys were. Did you finish this? You were tinkering with adding like large print support.
That's something we released about a year ago. That was another of these features that came out of we didn't have on our map, and Joanna Penn is actually who really started a push for large print and had some really promising results, and politely asked
the driving force behind a lot of new features.
She started in a very what I assume is a very Joanna way. Started very politely, gave us a heads up that, hey, this would be really helpful, and then, okay, that's we'll think about it. And then about every couple of weeks we'd get another email from one of her readers say, hey, large print would be great, and finally we realized, okay, we've got to do this. And it was a great feature to put in. It's one of those things, it was fun to research, and it was fun to produce some of these large print books and hand them around to family. And everyone's like, oh, this is nice. I like reading this.
What are some of the challenges you guys had to overcome for that?
Um, uh, a big thing that is difficult for print is, and this has come into play a few times, is print on demand is awesome in many ways. One thing that is difficult is the way it is the expense. The expense of a print on demand book is per page. And so that means, and it doesn't matter how big that page is. So this actually came up because as we were doing large print, we were also doing the other side of the spectrum with because a big request we had was mass market.
Right.
And mass market is kind of thing that this works really great in traditional publishing. You can use less expensive paper.
Right.
You're just dealing with economies of scale. It doesn't work as well in print on demand because you can find that a mass market paperback is actually more expensive to print than a regular size print. So anyway, that's all. Back to large print. That's a challenge. You're going to make the font size bigger so that it's easier to read. You need to be careful so that your book doesn't turn into this giant tome that is really heavy to carry and really expensive to print. So getting that right balance of this is easy to read and yet we're not totally jacking up the expense cost of printing it was hard to get that balance just right.
Yeah, and I think that is it's we deal with this too, by the way. I mean, people are asking for large print, thinking it's just as simple as enlarging the font or something, and there's so many other things that you have to consider.
Right. Yeah, and it goes to everything. It's you can increase the font size of your text, but you've got to think about page numbers and headings, and you don't want all of those things to be this giant 16 or 18 point font. So it really is kind of redesigning the book and finding that balance. And then, like anything we do, we want to make it so it seems really simple. So it's really, in Vellum, it's just you just choose that size, and we'll take care of all the rest. But a lot goes into all of those fine little details to get it to all feel right and balanced.
Yeah. So what are some features built in that you guys think people may not be aware of that might be useful?
Well, I think a big thing that we have a lot of people who come to us because they want to get an ebook out on Amazon.
Yeah.
And certainly, that is the most popular platform.
Yeah.
At some point, a lot of people consider switching to going wide. And there's a lot of financial marketing questions to consider that. But we want to make sure that people know that, well, when you make that decision, even if you want to try it out for a couple of years, or I think a lot of common advice is pick a series or something like that to try it out for, is that, well, it's just another checkbox. And, if they're using draft to digital, we have a special format just for draft to digital that, when you want to go wide with draft to digital, you can just output into another file. So there's a lot to consider there, but at least from a technical level, we want to keep that simple. And that is something that is harder if you're doing it yourself. Every store has its own weird things that work and things that don't work. And we've coded that into Vellum so that, if you're sending a book to Apple, we'll make sure that there's things to get things right there. If you're sending a book to Barnes and Noble, we'll disable a few features that don't quite work well at Barnes and Noble. So we want to make sure people know that that's easy to do.
If only there were a free service out there that would distribute your books to these places and take care of that for you.
Yeah.
But we do. So D2D works. We work with you guys on a couple of things, and we've been kicking around some other ideas in the background. You want to talk a little bit about some of that? You don't have to
Yeah.
reveal any of the secret stuff, but
Yeah, if you use D2D before, you know that D2D has a great feature where you can replace your front matter and your back matter, and that really comes into handy with your also buy page. And it's one of those things is similar to what I mentioned with Scrivener, where we felt like, hey, this is really close. Feels like we almost have enough so that we can get it just right. And that was a great, little meeting that we had with you to figure, okay, if we just do these few things on our end and you do these things on your end, we can make sure that where to remove pages and how to put them back in. And so I think that's worked great for both of our customers.
Yeah. It's been fun, kind of kicking around ideas for future work too.
Yeah.
The dream board gets filled up pretty quick, and then it has to migrate over to the in development board, and then things slow down a little.
Yeah.
Because you can dream all day, but then somebody has to build this stuff.
Yeah.
So you guys, and I know we've got questions about it and everything, but I was going to address this anyway. But you guys are only available on the Mac platform right now.
Right. Yeah.
What's kind of the reason behind that?
The reason is, for those who don't know, we're a very tiny company. It's just me and the other half of the company is Brad Andelman. We decided to start this and stay very small. We'd both worked at a large company before, and that was one reason we want to keep it very focused on one thing, and it's hard to do that. In our previous job, we'd also developed kind of cross-platform software,
right?
And there's some good things about that, but it's you can make software that people appreciate, but to make software that people really love, you really have to go all in on whatever the platform that might be, and for us that was Mac, and also a lot of the design of Vellum itself comes from things that we knew we could leverage on the Mac platform. When we started, our company didn't know what we were going to do. We thought we were going to make iPhone apps. When we kind of came to this idea of addressing formatting, we looked at the platforms and we kind of said, actually, on Mac we can get together a pretty basic editor and leverage a lot of the editing tools. We can make use of their web frameworks to give a live preview. There's a lot that influence the design of Mac, and so that's to say, I don't know if it would work in the same way on another platform. But the main thing is, we want to be able to stay small. We want to be able to keep making changes. I talked about large print. We were able to kind of totally change direction and say, we need to switch on to large print, and we could do that because we're just a very small company, and we, the meeting to discuss that is just Brad and I talking and saying, we just need to do that. Let's change direction. And so that's why we've decided to stay on Mac. You talked about the dream board. We've still got a ton of stuff we want to do. And developing a whole new platform would mean we'd basically stop. We'd stop, and the Vellum would just kind of stop being what it is for a few years. So we're not ready to do that now. Maybe at some point we'll say, hey, we're happy with how this is, and we'll grow the company, hire some Windows developers. Maybe it won't be the exact same software, but it can be something that feels close to, again, similar to Scrivener and Windows and Mac. They're not exactly the same, but they're close enough that you can call them both Scrivener.
It's and I know how challenging that it is, coming from I've been a part of the software world for quite a while, and it's always easy to dream that sort of thing up, and then implementation is
Yeah,
damn
I
near
mean,
impossible.
you've always got to make choices.
Right.
And every that's kind of what focus is deciding, hey, we're going to do this and we're not going to do this.
Right.
And that we feel very strongly about that. That's part of why we spend a lot of time trying to keep Vellum simple. And that means, hey, we're not going to do this because we want to make it as simple as possible. And so that's a big part of those kinds of decisions.
So that said, what are do you have any strategies or workarounds for people who would still really very much like to use Vellum but don't have a Mac?
Yeah, there's a service called Macking Cloud. We don't outright recommend this on our website, and people kind of find it on their own. The reason we don't straight up recommend it is it doesn't work. It may not work for everyone. It's
Right.
You're basically you're renting a Mac that is in a server rack somewhere, and you have a little window onto it. So I think to really make that work is a combination of, you need to have a good internet connection, and you need to feel kind of comfortable with this concept of using this remote computer, and be figure out like a syncing system, like using Dropbox. For some users, it's no problem. They'll say, hey, it works out just fine. I'm only using Vellum for 10 or 15 minutes to produce my book. Yeah, it's not a perfect experience, but it's good enough for those 15 minutes. And we've got other users who you can't make sense of any of it. So and that's fine. It's not an easy thing.
Right.
But yeah, there are enough people using Macking Cloud that I think they've got their servers set up with Vellum installed already on it. So
Right.
and there's not a license on there, but you don't have to deal with any sort of installation. It's just there on those computers.
Interesting. So,
Yeah.
that is interesting. Of course, you can get a pretty cheap Mac I say that relatively speaking, depending on your budget,
Yeah.
you could probably find a cheap Mac somewhere for a couple $100. And
yeah, we don't. I don't love saying to people who say, "Well, what can I do?" and telling them, "Well, go and buy a Mac." But we do have people who tell us, "Hey, I'm a Windows person, but there's enough reasons for me to have an Apple computer." And yeah, they'll buy a MacBook Air. A refurbished MacBook Air is a great machine. I still have a 8-year-old MacBook Air that that we originally developed Vellum on, that still is working great, and we use it for testing, and those are in the Mac world relatively affordable. So that is for some people who that works with their budgets, and we hear from people that it's their business, so it's a business purchase, and it's enough of a thing that people do that.
Yeah. And I think eventually you just switch.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny hearing from these people, because some of them are like, I hate this thing, but I love your software. And some people are like, oh no, you tempted me over, and now I'm using Mac. It's not going to happen for everyone. We know people are pretty passionate about their Windows machines, but some people do end up using their Macs more than they expect.
Right. So, you guys have when this all goes through and you hit the little export or generate button, you get all the various storefronts. We talked a little bit about this. And then there's that general EPUB. Is that, are there any limitations with using that in places? I mean, I know Barnes & Noble, you mentioned, has some rules, but
and a lot of the Barnes & Noble is frankly a lot of the reasons for that generic EPUB. It's kind of the lowest common denominator. The main thing that we do tell people is that generic EPUB, it will work in places. We don't recommend uploading to Amazon, because Amazon has their own weird things. So for Amazon, we really do recommend uploading the Kindle version, because we've taken the time to find all of the things, especially with things like Look Inside and their cloud viewer that has its own weird things. We've got a bunch of special tweaks in the Kindle version that would cause problems anywhere else. So we do recommend people upload that Kindle version to Amazon.
Yeah, I discovered that pretty early on, because they'll do a conversion, but something always goes wrong.
Yeah, it's it's part of it is this old Mobi format that is, I mean, older than my kids. And for, I don't know why they keep supporting it, but they, and they're always trying to convert back to this format.
Right.
And that's there's all sorts of things that can go wrong in that stage.
Yeah.
So that's why that stage is why we tell people to use the Kindle specific version.
Yeah. So on the print side,
well,
this is still relatively new. I mean, it's been around for a few years now. I remember the huge excitement from me and everyone else when you guys announced that you were going to support print layout. So you, what are because you essentially support every available industry standard size and layout, right?
Yeah, we you can't pick your own size, but we cover the first four. We cover are really the most popular ones, and then we've got a couple of options for large print and mass market, and among those, pretty much any size you think you're going to want is going to be there in there. Not giant workbooks. Vellum is an awesome tool for workbooks anyway, but if you're doing a paperback or even a hardcover through Ingram Spark, we'll have the most common sizes there.
Yeah, it's all very neat and organized too. When I go in and set a book up, and there are a lot of options out there for this sort of thing. But the reason I gravitated toward Vellum is because it's all sort of done for you. So I can insert a copyright page, I can insert it about the author, all that stuff. It's very cool.
Yeah, and it's the interesting thing is we started as an ebook tool. When we started, people were talking about the death of print.
Right.
So we didn't have that really on we kind of like, oh, maybe. But what we heard a lot from people was, ebooks make up the bulk of my sales, but it's nice to have that paperback. It's nice to have it to give to my, most loyal readers. It's nice to give it to my friends. It's nice to have on my bookshelf. People would say, I like the idea of a paperback. I just can't rationalize spending all that time to format it if it's not going to make me much in the way of sales. Right. And, exceptions. Some people do make, good money off paperbacks, but that was what we went in there with it, with that design constraint of, we want to make something so that you don't have to have that thought of, is this worth it? So it's really is just another checkbox. If you want that print edition, you'll get a print edition, then you can put it on your bookshelf. So
I think it was Seth Godin who said that if you're in the book business, you're in the souvenir business. That's what print books have become for a lot of authors.
And I totally get it. I still like reading print books, so they're nice to have. They're nice to look at. So we want to, whether it's people are successful with their paperbacks, or if they just wanted to have, for those marketing purposes or just for that personal satisfaction, we wanted to make it really easy.
So what's coming up next, man? What can you share with us about the future? First of all, every time I open Vellum, I have to wait for it to update. It's like it's something new almost every time I open it. So what's coming up?
Well, we don't talk about what's coming up. So sorry. And the reason, there's two reasons. One is we sometimes have to change that. We'll have something in mind and we'll start getting on it, and we'll realize, what, we need to work on, large print I brought up, or trim sizes. And this has happened enough times that we realize, what, we can't talk about it. And then the other reason is I mean, you're in software, this, but it's really hard. If you talk about a feature, the first thing people ask is, well, when is it going to be available? And you can say, well, early 2020, but then on January 1st, you're getting an email saying, well, it's early January 2020. Where's my feature?
Or you can say it'll be out in May, and then in April a pandemic strikes.
Yeah, also that.
I'm sorry.
So yeah, what we can talk about though is, and this is another kind of pivot thing, is full bleed options in Vellum. This was something that we wanted to do.
Yeah.
Anytime I'm back when you could go to bookstores. But anytime I'd go with my kids to the bookstore, I'd kind of find myself in the YA section, just paging through, because it's just like, there's just fun design choices in those books. And a common thing is to have a really dramatic full bleed image. Full bleed means the graphics go all the way to the edge of the page.
Right.
And we wanted to do this, and we were like, but it's going to be really hard. Can we spend the time? And, we just heard from enough people who say, I wish I could do these full bleed title pages. And they kind of recognize, I know that's going to be hard, but it'd be really cool to have my book look as cool as those trad published books. And so we released that just a couple months ago, and we got a great response, because people were it was suddenly something they could do that they didn't think they'd be able to do. And we try to make it as simple as possible. You drag in your image, you say, hey, make this full bleed, and Vellum will take care of all of the settings, because when you do a full bleed image, you've got to basically change the entire book, even if it's just one page. And so you don't even have to think about that. Vellum just takes care of it for you.
I love it.
Yeah, that's been
go ahead.
That's been fun. We kind of had to say, we've gotten some good feedback ahead of time. People were really passionate about it. We didn't know. We're like, we just got to do this because we think it's going to be fun and people are going to like it. And we got a really great response. So that was nice to hear about.
I'm planning to use it for full page ads in the back of the book.
Yeah. So a title page, an ad in the back, or maps was a common thing.
Maps is something else.
Yeah. So we wanted to hit all of those.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
All right. A great choice, by the way, to focus on adding that first before you went on. Great choice. So everybody out there, no matter where you are, Facebook, YouTube, etc., we the last 15 minutes, we're going to answer your questions live. So make sure you are popping your questions into the chat there, and I'll read them and pop them up if I can see them. So, but first up, I got a couple of comments. Let's see. We got Anthony says, Vellum is freaking amazing. I agree. So there you go, Brad.
Glad you like it, Anthony.
Chad says, hello from Chicago. Vellum is awesome. Thanks to the Brads.
Yeah, Chad, we talked to Chad in Chicago, and that was actually where we talked a lot about full bleed with a lot of people. So I think we have a Chad, Brad, and Brad selfie out there somewhere.
Yeah, I gotta get in on that action. Maybe CAD.
Yeah.
So
I think we were looking for a Thad or a Tad.
Thad. All right. We got another comment from Chad. Says he uses a Ulysses, which has a super because we talked about Scrivener, but we didn't talk about Ulysses. Super easy Vellum export option. Is it similar to the one in Scrivener?
Maybe. So Vellum imports a docx file. That's Words format.
Right.
The great thing about that format is it's an open format. So a lot of software, even if you're not using Word, can export something in that docx format. And I think Ulysses has a native docx export, and then it has a whole plugin system. So I think people have written some plugins that add that extra data that makes things go a little bit more smoothly when they know it's going into Vellum.
Yeah. I used to use Ulysses back in the day, but switched.
Yeah,
Oh,
it's it's not
it's
for
actually
everyone.
pretty cool. Yeah, I liked it. The markup was an interesting way to handle formatting. I think that when I started having markup showing up in the books when they went live, though, I had to kind of dial back. So
Yeah,
but it's still, I always did love it. So
yeah. I mean, it's another very very focused
very focused.
program.
That's
And
exactly
so, they've made decisions, and I guess opinionated software is a term I've seen out there. And, you either love it or hate it, but that's great because some people do love it.
There's plenty of room for all the different things people love. So here's a question. Do you have a way to change links per what format is outputted? Example, a review link to Amazon from Mobi, but to a website landing page via the EPUB exports.
Actually, Kevin mentioned there's some features that not everyone knows about, and this is one of them. There's a feature called store links.
Yeah.
And whenever you if you just paste in a link to Amazon, Vellum will automatically detect that that's a link to a book and convert it into what we call a store link.
Yeah.
And so that will ensure that link to Amazon only makes it into your Kindle version. But if you click on that link, you'll see a little pop-up, and you'll be able to, if you're using a generic EPUB, you can use a website, you can use books to read. If you're going to individual vendors, you can supply your identifiers for Apple Books and Kobo and Google Play and etc.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I wasn't necessarily going to pimp books to read, but since you brought it up,
so yeah, if you go to our help pages, look for something called store links. You can also just Google that. You should find a help page that explains all of that, how that works.
Here's a question for you: Is you guys have, maybe I've overlooked this, or maybe this exists, or are you planning to create this? A sort of universal also buy that can be automatically inserted in each book.
It's on our dream board.
Okay,
it's on our dream board.
When are you gonna release it? No.
We talked about it. I mean, one reason we haven't done that is actually Books to Read is out there, and so when people, so we do the store links where you have, a dedicated link that goes straight to, and that works actually great for Apple Books in particular, is to have a direct link. When you have a direct link to Apple Books, Apple Books won't leave the reading software. It'll just show a nice pop-up. So that's a nice thing to consider. But, especially if you've got, 5 different stores, something like Books to Read can be handy. So, for the generic EPUB, when you're using a store link for Kindle, you'll put in the ASIN. For Apple Books, you'll put in their identifier. And then for generic EPUB, it's just a website. So you can, we tell people you can link to your own website. But yeah, you can use Books to Read. People like to use their own form of evergreen links. So you can use that too. But we will take care of making sure that Kindle, that link to Amazon is only going to be in Kindle. Otherwise, Apple Books will
kick that back. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Shelley is asking, my book has lots of images and graphs. The photos seem easy to import. The graphs are not as easy. What format works best to save graphs as for importing into Vellum? She gives some examples.
All of the formats, she said TIFF, JPEG, PNG, all of those, Vellum will take any of them. And we try to support most common bitmap formats. So Windows specific formats we will handle. And then what Vellum will do is convert those as necessary. So for Kindle, for example, Kindle won't take a TIFF image, has limited support for PNG. And so we'll convert those to JPEGs. We sometimes, if people have very specific images, we'll maybe say, oh, well, if it's like a sharp black and white image, well, maybe actually tell people to use GIF or GIF, which surprises people, but that's actually a widely supported image format. And sometimes if you've got really sharp graphical data rather than an image, that can actually be the best format to use.
Yeah.
But but Vellum will take it all. So when we're talking about best format to use, it's really, if you really want to, zoom in and make sure everything's correct, then it can be specific to the picture, but you don't have to worry about it failing a conversion or something like that. We'll just convert it as necessary.
Yeah, that's part of your easy button strategy.
Yeah, for sure.
What makes Vellum so great. So this one is let's see, just discover this one. I was reading earlier, and I think there's a clarifying question later. But trying out Vellum, but nothing happens when I click on the import Word file. I've tried in both Chrome and Safari, same problem. How do I solve it? I don't know where the browser comes in on that exactly.
Yeah,
but
well, we do hear about this sometimes.
Let's see.
Oh, is this a different?
Here's the clarification. With Vellum, I can prepare my book or ebook for ebook and print. How would the printed book aspect work? I guess it's a different question, but the previous question was.
Yeah. Well, I'll answer this one first, actually.
Okay. All right. Well, let me go back.
Okay. All right. Okay. Okay. So for print on demand, Vellum creates a PDF file. That's the file. Now for print, if you haven't produced a paperback with print on demand before, the thing to know is there's two files. One is called the interior file. That's basically for all the pages of the book. That's what Vellum is going to produce. You'll upload a cover file, which is the wraparound front, spine, and back file separately. So Vellum will produce that interior PDF file, and you'll upload that file. If you're using Amazon KDP, we've got a brief guide to, hey, upload this file here. You can find that on our website. And after you generate your files, we show, hey, you're ready to publish. Here's more about doing that.
Yeah.
But let's see, back to the first question. We do sometimes hear questions like this. So there's two things that can happen. One is when you click import Word file, you're going to be presented with a window where you can choose the file you want to import. Sometimes that window, you may not have noticed that window kind of went somewhere else on your monitor. Some people have two monitor displays. That can sometimes be the case. The other thing that can happen is is on Mac, there's very tight security about what programs can access your files, and that's a stage in Vellum where Vellum is asking your Mac, hey, can I access the files? And sometimes on the Mac that can go wrong, and so what we tell people is to just quit and restart Vellum, and that usually joggles things on your Macs, and usually after you do that, you'll be able to see that file picker.
All right. This is an interesting question because I don't actually know the limitation here, so maybe any chance that Vellum will support a full cover for print books? I guess it's a wraparound cover.
Yeah, so right now Vellum only does the interior, so it's not a tool to design a cover.
Right.
We do sometimes get questions. Most of our users we hear from are working with cover designers who will do that for them. So we don't have plans right now to add a cover design tool, but there are some other tools out there to do that. Actually, if you've got a very simple thing, I think KDP has their own cover creator. I think Canva has some templates.
Draft Digital's D2D Print is going to include a cover converter just to throw it in there.
Right.
I know it's still in beta, but you can probably get in the beta if you're
and I imagine it's probably similar to what you can do with Amazon's is you start with your front cover and then add some basic stuff. If you want more sophisticated stuff on the back cover or really specific spine details, that's something that you can talk to a cover designer. And I think this is one thing we've heard from is a lot of people do use cover designers for their ebook cover. Most of the time, they're not going to charge you twice as much for ebook and print. Most of the time, making ebook and print is just going to be a marginal increase. So that's something when you're talking to cover designers to ask about, because usually they'll be able to give them both to you for just a little bit more.
Yeah, just have them design the full cover and cut it down. That's usually the easiest way.
Yeah.
This is going to have to be the last question because we're actually right up against the line, but I accidentally overlooked it. So in the social media area for the About the Author back matter, are there plans to add an option for authors to include their Patreon link?
Yeah, we've gotten a few requests for that. So for those who don't know, in the About the Author page that Vellum creates, we've got a built-in tool for adding little links with the icons for, I think we've got Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Pinterest, YouTube, a few more I've forgotten. But yeah, we do hear from authors who are using Patreon more. So we do have that suggestion on our books. We don't have a release date right now, but we're keeping it in mind.
He's not going to give you a date for anything, folks.
Sorry.
Just so you're aware. All right. Well, Brad, man, I appreciate you joining us, hanging out with me, and talking about. This is a great software. It's a great platform. I have used it almost since the beginning, and I only discover a new feature that you guys add like every 3 years. So, but otherwise, it's fantastic.
Thanks. Glad it's working for you. Thank you.
It is. All right, everybody. Make sure you pop on over to vellum.pub, and that's where you'll find Vellum and more information about Vellum. You can reach out to at least one of the two Brads.
Yeah.
From that website.
And we do at that website, you can download the software for free. You can try it out for as long as you want. The way we have our purchase link set up is you only have to make a purchase when you're ready to publish. So no cost in trying out to see.
Yeah, it's like a full version, but when you want to spit out the books, you have to upgrade that, and that is much appreciated. It's a lot of fun to kind of play around with that stuff ahead of time. So.
Yeah, that's how we evaluate software. So we wanted to make sure that people could, no pressure, just check it out and see how it works for them.
Excellent. All right, everybody. Some of you I know are watching from both Facebook and YouTube. Thanks for tuning in. Make sure wherever you are, you subscribe to us, follow us, subscribe to us on YouTube, hit the little bell icon. That's what YouTubers have to tell you.
Yeah.
And follow us on Facebook at Facebook/Draft2Digital. And of course, it's YouTube/Draft2Digital. Totally left that off. And of course, hop on over to dddlive.com. Make sure you bookmark that page. You'll see a countdown to the next live broadcast we do. If you're listening to this on the podcast, by the way, these D2D Spotlights have been happening every day for the moment, and we're going to start going weekly soon. But tune in at dddlive.com, and you'll be able to catch all the back episodes plus anything that's coming up. And Mr. Brad West of Vellum, thank you so much for tuning in with us.
Yeah, thanks, Kevin. It's fun.
All right, everybody. We'll see you all next time.